Welcome to Season 2 of How to Not Kill Your Community, a podcast of the Delaware Community Foundation. Join us in exploring how the choices we make impact the well-being of our families and neighbors. This season, we'll bring together experts in volunteering, entrepreneurship, public transportation, and even joy to tackle one essential question: how do we not kill our community? Welcome back again to How to Not Kill Your Community. We've got another really exciting, interesting guest. I am so pleased to welcome Corie Priest to the table. Corie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited for
I am too. So I'm going to say a little bit about who you are.
Yes.
And we're going to get into the substance.
Absolutely.
Because the topic is about people returning to our communities.
Mm-hmm.
So Corie is the Director of Community Engagement for the Delaware Department of Justice, a pioneering role that you began now 7 years ago, 2019.
Yeah, April will be 7 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's the first time the department hired somebody it had previously prosecuted, which is what we're talking about.
That's right.
Nationally respected voice in reentry and criminal justice reform, began your professional journey at the Wilmington Hope Commission Achievement Center, cool organization, one of Delaware's first peer support specialists, and later serving as in-reach coordinator and Newcastle County Supervisor for Reentry for Connections there. So, Corie, recidivism rates in the United States are high. 60% of people released from prison were reincarcerated again within 3 years. That's a lot. With a statistic that powerful and strong and damning, make the case for why we should spend resources working with community members returning. Why does it matter?
It matters because, Stu, if you spot map your community, in any community across America, you'll see that folks have been incarcerated that are your neighbors, right? And if we don't service this population, then there's a high chance that your community will be inundated with crime. And crime is relational too, right? So, and when we talk about servicing the folks who are coming home from incarceration, it necessarily don't start the moment they come home. Really, it should start the moment they enter the prison system in its entirety, right? So that's where recidivism and returning home from incarceration should start. And that's proper programming, that's cognitive behavioral restructuring, that's addressing your mental health and your substance use needs. And that should take place the moment they put the cuffs on you and sit you inside of an institution.
And yet for many people, many elected officials and others say, look, we can't afford the recidivism side of the shop, so this is all about punishment. And so, which is a completely contrary idea to how do you work with people. So why shouldn't we just say, hey, you're going to get punished and you'll come back out and you'll have to deal with it?
Because sometimes punishment is not the root cause, right? So you're punishing someone who really need the help and support and the services that are necessary for someone to come home and be successful in their returning or their reentry journey, right? And so if I'm battling an addiction and I go inside of a convenience store and steal, and you put the cuffs on me and send me away, that's not addressing my issue, right? I need to address the addiction issue. And so our institutions throughout our country is our highest mental health institutions in terms of population in our country, right? So if you look at someone like Howard R. Young or James T. Vaughn, Sussex Correctional, or even Baylor, right? The residents that are there are faced with co-occurring disorders, right? Or comorbidity issues, right? From health to substance use to mental health, right? And if it's not addressed, then they're coming back to our communities.
And I would imagine it also within the institutions, if you've got a majority of people with some challenge like this, trying to do that training and education and behavioral counseling, what have you, is exceedingly complicated.
Absolutely. And there are not enough manpower, right? Not enough resources. When I was incarcerated, I spent 2 years incarcerated from 2009 to 2011, and realize our institutions are filled with brilliant people, artistic folk, skilled people, folks who are just masterminds in their own lives, right? And so they're now being warehoused in a facility that's not tapping into those talents, right? And so when I sat in a room filled with 120 men with varying degrees of charges, and I said, what can I do to empower this group? What can I do to be the advocate, to be the spokesperson, to be the help that these individuals might need? And they're my peers, right? And so I had to really sit back and analyze the skills and the gifts that God has given me to transform their lives in such a meaningful way. And whatever that means.
And transform yours at the same time.
At the same time.
So as a recovery coach, right, you being a recovery coach, how do you see all of these coming together? How do you help people find how to remake themselves?
That's a good question, because the nexus is there, right? Mental health, substance abuse, and incarceration. Right. My good buddy John Cook always says, when you're born, you look like your parents. When you die, you look like your decisions.
Oh, wow.
Right.
I got to work on that. Dang.
Right. And so how do people make sound decisions in some of their most vulnerable situations or states, right? And when they look at the evidence, which is me, right? I came home from jail and I knew I wasn't going back. And I knew it.
And you actually had a path of sorts.
Right. Right. And had the right people in my corner, right? So once, and that is deliberate, right? And it's a selfish journey. I tell people that if I'm working with you as a recovery coach, this is a selfish journey. Selfish, not in a bad way, but selfish is as when I look in the mirror, I'm looking at myself, right? And if I look at myself and I see that things aren't right, how do I make them right? How do I get them right? And who's going to help me in this journey?
We're also in a time right now where budgets are being cut all over the place. I mean, nonprofits are being cut like crazy. The federal government's not providing things. The state government's tighter than ever. So what's the direction of this work right now? You're still in your position, but one man can't do this whole thing. You need support.
That's right.
What are you seeing?
That's right. What I've seen over the years too, that our state has embraced peers, right? And so we talk about, how do we get folks that are incarcerated out in the community thriving? We have to show that the folks who have been incarcerated are now hugely successful in their own right in their community, right? So we have entrepreneurs, we have folks who are starting their nonprofits, their 501c3s. We have folks that are at Legislative Hall advocating. And I just look at myself. Our Attorney General, Kathleen Jennings, had the courage to hire me, right?
Props to Kathleen.
And I don't know who else would have hired someone that their office is prosecuted, right? And so I'm at the highest level of peerism in the state, so to speak, right? And so when we have folks that are coming out, going to law school after being incarcerated and, going through our criminal justice system, we have a whole coalition of folks who are hugely successful after incarceration, and we need our employer partners to see that. We need our Chamber of Commerce, all of them, to see that we can come out and be successful because we're brilliant individuals, right? And to give us opportunity, to let us sit at the table and employ us.
And not just say, oh, this is a sweet thing to do, but say this is a business forward thing to do for the employers. Have you all spoken with the Chambers of Commerce and the Rotary clubs and all that?
I have.
You have?
Yeah.
What kind of reaction do you get?
Amazing.
Yeah. People get it.
They get it.
And they're real people too. I mean, I want to say, people who created businesses, run businesses, they've been down that. They may not have been arrested themselves, but they know they have family members who have substance abuse or mental health or have gotten in trouble.
Listen, Stu, I've never met a man who didn't commit a felony. It's just,
He's talking to you.
I've never met a man that didn't commit a felony, right? And so many aren't getting arrested for it. Right. That don't mean they haven't committed a felony or made some poor decision, right? And most times we've made poor decisions if we've been incarcerated, and and I say that with not a grain of salt, but I say that truthfully, right? And how do we come out of incarceration after spending, it doesn't matter how many years or days, and reacclimate and get on this journey to redemption. Right. I think we need to show that more people are doing it, and our state would be a better state when we recognize that there are a lot of amazing people who have overcame.
And so within that, the people who are most directly affected by the system tend to be classes of people.
Yeah.
Right? Black Americans are much more highly incarcerated and justice involved than, let's say, wealthy people, like people in my neighborhood, right, in Wilmington. But it's like there aren't as many people who are getting picked up, even if they've all committed felonies.
Yeah.
So talk about how we address that challenge.
Well, we have to look at our community, and city of Wilmington is probably the third most police area in the country, right? I think we run around between, I say 1 in 5.
Is that right? But police officers
per capita.
Wow, I didn't know.
Right. That. And so we have about, I can't think, about 225 officers to how many people in the city of Wilmington? About 70,000.
70, 80.
And that's not the city, right?
Yeah.
That's not 198, 102, and 05.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but we also have a thing called Safe Streets who can patrol our community, probation and parole, the county, the state. I just mentioned, our Wilmington. And
You
so,
don't need to say that with judgment. Just say, here's the facts.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have this whole thing, like Wilmington Police Department has a robust community engagement unit, right, that we really need. And they're doing a phenomenal job out there, like, I kid you not. And so our law enforcement partners aren't going anywhere. So how do we coexist together, right? We mentioned several parts of Wilmington that don't see police, maybe once or twice a week.
Right.
If I step out of my doorstep on 23rd and Jessup or on 5th and Franklin or, 6th and Madison, I'm gonna probably see a police officer every 10 minutes, right? Someone that every time I step out on my step, they're gonna hold me accountable, right? And so as we are saturated with a lot of officers, people who can patrol and hold us accountable in our community, ordinarily you're gonna see massive amounts of arrest, right? Especially for a community who, being a criminal is expensive.
Say more. You mean because of going to prison, or just
going to prison? And once you're there, you got commissary. You're trying to get an attorney. You want to bail out. It pulls at the pockets.
Yeah.
And so for a population of people who don't really have it anyway, right? Because of our system and how it's designed, it's been designed to target Black and brown men. From slavery to mass incarceration, and Brian Stevenson does a great job at depicting that. And so, once we think about how do we overcome, I think we look at our education system. I think we look at our healthcare. I think we look at the lack of home ownership in the Black community. We look at all these systems that are in place to, it's called structural racism, right? And then we look at the numbers of people who are affected by mass incarceration. And it's indicative of, splitting up the Black family, right?
Well, and if we look at just the schools alone, I mean, the education alone, and the schools that are primarily serving some of the poorest communities in the city, if you just have good teachers, that's not adequate.
That's right.
You need community infrastructure. You need other students who are also in it. And overcoming that is exceedingly difficult.
No, and that's the truth. And education is an indicator of success, I believe. And we really have to look at our public school system here in the state of Delaware, in particular Newcastle County, and figure out how we can make it a robust, healthy, thriving system. Right? Like, I grew up in the city of Wilmington, in the projects of South Bridge, 23rd and Jessup, and I know what a lack of education can get you.
Yeah. So circling back to the 60% of released prisoners were reincarcerated within 3 years. What are the signs of hope in all of this? What do you see as real bright spots of things that are changing?
Yeah, you just look at the landscape, right? Right now, in crime, if we look at the statistics, violent crime, and crime in general, shooting statistics, homicides are down throughout the country, right? But we can talk about
that's not what they're saying.
That's not.
It's
they're
not what
gonna
they're
say
saying.
that.
I know, I'm kidding.
But no, it's down. And if you look at kind of the reasons, you look at our community partners who are really targeting the individuals who are creating some of our most unsafe neighborhoods, right? It's called focused deterrence. I do a lot of group and gang violence intervention. And, there was a point in time that our law enforcement, AG's office, our police partners will do a dragnet indictment of a whole city, right? Just in hopes to get a few people. Now it's really targeted. You know who's doing the crime. The people, and that's who you address. And we can't just arrest our way out of these issues. We have to really target the individuals and figure out what resources and services you can put in place. Because, like I said, just because the cuffs are put on me doesn't mean I'm gonna change their behavior. You get what I'm saying?
Right, I
do. So put the cuffs on, and then we can do a whole robust intervention. Right. Yeah. Why? Why are you breaking in these cars along this block? Is there food in the house? Are your parents working? Or, how can we disrupt the behavior, right? And you do that through cognitive change, resources, love. All of it's based on love, right? And that's the premise of the work. Yeah. And so they say, yo, Corie, like, why are you have these guys who are known shooters in the community. Why are you embracing them? I said, because I don't want them to shoot again.
All right.
They've already done it. And so how about I put them in situations where they say, you know what, life is valuable. Yeah. And I want longevity.
Right.
And
if you walk in the world and you think, I'm not going to live that long anyway, and I'm not going to get anything.
Right.
So I'm going to
And no one cares about me.
And nobody cares.
Right. And so I have a whole group of people who are feeling loved by the work we're doing, and so the gun violence is down in our state. We can attribute it to many different things, but group violence intervention is something is dear to my heart. Yeah. And doing that work, and quite frankly, certain people who need to be arrested are arrested, yeah. Right? They're off our streets, and, some of them aren't coming home. And how do we look at their friends, their family members, their close connections, and say, I don't want you going down that path. How do I get you out of it?
It's encouraging to me that people are more and more than in the past, saying, look, I mean, even the most crass analysis says, look, at some point that person's going to be back in the community, right? Except for very few people. They're going to be back in the community. And how do you want them to engage with the community when they do get back? I mean, so for our own self-interest, it's a reason not to ignore this.
Yeah, 95% of people are coming home from incarceration.
Right. We got to do something.
Right. Maybe 3 to 5 are sentenced to life without parole. Yeah. But now, you have guys who are coming out and women who are coming out who've been sentenced to life, right? Yeah. Brian Stevenson, he amazing guy.
Great Delawarean.
Great Delawarean down in Milton, right? And, he came up with a law that says, hey, we can't, sentence juveniles to life in prison, and we can't, they can't be sentenced to death. And so some now are coming out after doing 40 years, 35, 30.
How are you prepared for the world?
Right. Yeah. And so they have their unique needs, right? It's a lot of trauma, post-incarceration trauma. You have folks who they can't, a cell phone. What is a cell phone to someone who's done 40 years? But they're coming home. Right. And after spending that much time in prison, incarcerated, they're not coming out to commit another crime. They're just happy to live their next 5 or 10 years out, because they've been in so long. They probably have about 20, maybe 15, 20 years at the most to live a successful life. And so we looking at that now, right? These older gentlemen come home, and we can't expect them to work. Because who they're competing with, the college students, the folks who are already out here.
They don't even know how to work a computer at all, let alone code or do AI. Yeah.
And so, but we've made strides in the state of Delaware relative to our incarcerated population coming out and resettling on their journey.
Well, it's hard to imagine something more important, a whole big segment of the community that it needs needs to be and is part of our community, and we ignore to some degree at our peril.
Yeah.
Because we need workers,
Yeah.
we need people who are productive members of society, because if they're productive and if they're feeling
Yes.
the love, they're going to share it with other
Absolutely.
people. We're really lucky to have you in
Yeah.
this state, have you in this position, and I've really loved this conversation. Anything else you'd like to add here at the end?
No, I'm just appreciative of the opportunity to offer my perspective.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the great day.
Yeah, I will. Thank you a lot.
Thank you. All right. How to Not Kill Your Community is produced by 1440 Film Company and the Delaware Community Foundation, celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. Since our founding in 1986, the DCF has granted more than $530 million to 4,000 organizations by maximizing the giving of thousands of Delawareans. Learn how you can make more possible at www.delcf.org.